After I left National Semiconductor, it was like, what's next? So I thought about how can I do more good for more people more often. And so I got much more engaged in volunteering and getting committed in the community. I've always cared about the environment. So one of the things I did is I stepped up and did a lot more volunteering with the Sierra Club. And I've served in a number of leadership roles with them. And finally in 2013, I actually became the chapter director for 2 years. So when that term ended, I decided it was time to run for city council because I've always wanted to do more. My qualifications are I've been advocating for Sunnyvale for a long time. 3 years as a Snail Neighborhood Chair, and I'm starting my 5th year in the Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission, 2nd year as a chair. I'm on the Climate Action Committee, Safe Routes to School Coalition leader, Livable Sunnyvale member. There's more on my flyer, I can't cover it all. Sunnyvale is a wonderful city that we all love, but our booming economy has brought serious challenges. We've outgrown our road capacity, our job to housing balance is getting worse, affordable housing crisis. I'm an optimist by nature, and think together we can create a better future for Sunnyvale. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next candidate, Josh Grossman. Just give me just a moment.
Good. So last one, we had problems with the audio, so I'm thrilled that everyone can hear.
This is slight technical difficulties.
It's a timing difficulty.
There we go.
Does anybody have any problem with the sound?
Can you see? Let's wait till it's...
Ready?
I am ready. Hi everyone, my name is Joshua Grossman and I'm running for Sunnyvale City Council seat 2. Before we start, first I want to thank Glenn for his service. I'm a former school board president. I know how difficult it is to be an elected official. We have very different views on what's best for the city and the best way to move forward. But I believe that even though we have these differences, even though we represent different parties in terms of our voting, I think that we can disagree without being disagreeable. And that's something I look forward to doing, and I think that's an important thing, especially given where we're at as a country today. So I'm running a grassroots campaign. I'm taking no money from developers, PACs, unions, or anybody else other than individuals. And I'm doing that because I think it's really critical that we take those influences and limit them as much as possible as we can in our politics. I think they're having a corrosive effect.
We're trying to up the end.
Okay. I'm a former school board president, as I mentioned. I'm a member of Livable Sunnyvale. I'm the vice chair of our Housing and Human Services Commission. I'm the previous chair of that commission, and I'm also the head of our building and code appeals group. I'm an attorney and a technology executive, and I'm used to solving tough problems and working with disparate groups. And so that's what I want to bring to the table as we move forward on many of the tough issues that are facing Sunnyvale. Basically, what I want to tell you is that you and I working together can make sure that the decisions that are made for Sunnyvale are made in the best interest.
The audio.
It's dead.
Wait a minute. Yeah.
Test.
Is it on now?
Testing, 1, 2, 3, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we're going to bring this big computer to the finish. Okay. So basically what I believe is that together, we can work together to have decisions that are made in the best interests of Sunnyvalians, not in the best interests of PACs and interest groups and developers. And with your help, I think we can do that. And I urge you to join me, and we can work to take back City Hall on November 6th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for putting up with our little glitch there. We did test it beforehand, and it did work, but we were turning it up and apparently had a little bit of a challenge there. So our next candidate, Mason Fong, is on.
Sorry, can you use that more?
Well, good evening everyone. My name is Mason Fong, and again I'm running for Sunnyvale City Council seat 3. Thank you so much to the coalition for being here, and this is a great event. I'm so happy to see the great turnout and the amount of people that want to take a break from the Kavanaugh hearings. So thank you so much for being here. Again, I'm running for city council because I'm all about access. I want to make sure that everyone of every generation can live in Sunnyvale and not have to move to South San Jose, to Ohio, to Sacramento, to San Diego, but can really find a home in our city, whether you be a public servant making $50,000 a year, a firefighter making $80,000 a year, or a tech worker making over $100,000 a year. We need everyone in our community because together we're stronger. Currently, I serve as the Housing and Transportation Policy Analyst to a council member, where I do a lot of the work that a council member already does, whether that's going to the VTA Board of Director meeting and advising my council member on how to vote on an issue, how to bring an issue up, and how to amend an issue. I also work on land use. I go to the community meetings, I go to the planning hearings, I hear what the community has to say about traffic impacts, about access points on major thoroughfares, and on height densities. And I work with my council member, the proposed applicant, and the community to come to a resolution through multiple EIR analyses and other such issues. Prior to my current role, I worked for Congressman Mike Honda and Congressman Ro Khanna, where I served Sunnyvale as their point liaison. And so I'm really running about access so that everyone can afford the highest quality of life here. And I really want to put Sunnyvale on the map. I want to bring us back to the city that Al Gore used to visit to say this is the best, most well-run city in the United States. And I have the experience, the aptitude, and the demeanor to get that done. And I hope you will join me, and I look forward to a robust discussion tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much, candidates. We're just going to take a quick break and do this sound check again because we're too loud, we're too soft, and I think we really need to check that mic. So, Mike, could you help us with the mic? Yes, thank you very much. So let's just take a real quick break. It's going to be the three of you right there. I want to do testing with all three of you, please, because you have different levels of voice. Yeah.
You can back off the mic a little bit.
Test, 1, 2, 3. I apologize for my loud voice. 1, 2, 3. Test, test, test.
Maybe you need to pull back a little bit more.
Test, 1, 2, 3. Test, 1, 2, 3.
That's good.
Now check. Josh, because he's on the spot.
Test, 1, 2, 3, test, 1, 2, 3. I can sing as well.
3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1.
Would you raise your hand if you have any problem hearing either one of those?
I don't think they heard what you said.
3, 2, 1. Can you hear us? There we go. Heads are nodding.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay, my apologies. I think we're okay now for that. Okay. We'll go on to the next. This is our introductions. Thank you very much, candidates. We'll go on to our first topic question here, and the topic questions are 90 seconds each. So we'll start the questions regarding climate change and how it will affect Sunnyvale. So question number 1, beginning with chair number 2, which will be Henry Alexander III. In Sunnyvale's recent climate inventory, 40% of our greenhouse gas emissions in Sunnyvale are caused by gasoline-powered vehicles. Most of these are cars that drive around and through Sunnyvale. So, what do you think are the most important or most effective measures that we can take to reduce these emissions? That's you, yes, and that's 90 seconds.
Okay. Just want to make sure the volume's okay. California is known as the 15th largest greenhouse gas emitter worldwide. And that's pretty shocking information. And I saw in a report from 2014 that basically that the impact of natural gas consumption of over 170% could happen by 2050. Now, the results show that although the market penetration of global abundant gas may change the future of energy systems, it's not necessarily an effective substitute for climate change mitigation policy. So I say all that to say a couple of things. First off, how many of you live in Sunnyvale? Can you raise your hands? All right, keep your hands up. Please, keep your hands up high. All right, now put your hands down if you work in Sunnyvale. Or if you don't work in Sunnyvale, sorry. If you do not work in Sunnyvale, put your hands down. Okay, so that tells me that we have a very small percentage of people that actually live in Sunnyvale, or live and work in Sunnyvale, correct? Now, there are some commute issues that I think we could address. When I look at the numbers, it says 69% commute less than 10 miles. If someone gets on a bike and commutes 10 miles, that's 30 minutes of their commute, right? Now, the city and citizens should definitely do their part. And when I'm elected, I'll make sure that we can promote that into a greater form. And also, we can eliminate tons of emissions in the process.
Thank you very much, Henry Alexander III. And going on to Council Member Gustav Larsson. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So there are three things that come to mind for me when I hear the question. One is we can directly reduce the greenhouse gas emissions of vehicles by putting more EV chargers in new offices. We already have, and this is actually a double win, because California actually has quite a bit of solar energy that's already being generated right now. We have adjusted our rates to really incentivize more solar, which is a good thing. And so we can put that solar energy to use by putting chargers in offices, so while people are at work, they can charge up their vehicles and put that and take advantage of that abundant solar energy. That also reduces the greenhouse gas emissions because we replace gasoline with electric vehicles. Second thing we can do, more housing near jobs, not only in Sunnyvale, but encourage other cities to do this as well. We have a significant amount of pass-through traffic in the area because people are not able to live so close to their jobs. The final thing is we've organized a couple of transportation management agencies where, for example, in Moffett Park, companies can pool their resources to create shuttles and create other programs so people don't have to drive. But to take that to the next level, we can set up multi-city transportation management agencies. I think that's a big potential win going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Larsson. And candidate John Cordes.
Okay, so the first rule of when you want to get out of a hole is you stop digging, right? So one of the first things we have to do is prevent any new natural gas fixtures from being installed in any buildings in Sunnyvale, right? You gotta attack the problem by doing that. We need to increase the energy efficiency standards of all our buildings. We should be requiring zero net energy buildings now for commercial. The state doesn't require it until 2030. There's no reason we have to wait. There's also more than 7 cities in California already that require solar panels on all new construction. Sunnyvale hasn't done this yet. We still allow developers the option. We need to promote transit better, and we need to work on connecting this. I'll talk about that more when we get to the transportation question. We need better bicycle and walking infrastructure, right? We need to make it possible for people to get around without having to drive quite so often. So that means we need to reduce commute distances and improve quality of life. We've got to have more housing in our transit corridors, like along El Camino Real and in the Lawrence area station. Thank you.
Thank you very much, candidate Cordes, and we'll move on to candidate Josh Grossman. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So to quote another person, we need to electrify everything and clean up the grid. That's going to be our first job. So as Mr. Coder said, no natural gas for all new construction. We've had 5 years where we could have made a huge progress on this issue, and we haven't. If you look at the 40% that's talked about here in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, about 1/2 of that, equivalent to 1/2, is caused by residential and commercial natural gas. So if we move expeditiously to make sure that there's no new construction that has natural gas, we'll have a huge immediate impact on this problem. Frankly, cars are a little more difficult, but the first thing we can do there is to stop building office buildings without housing. That's what's causing an increase in the amount of commutes. It's become sort of an addiction for the city, and we need to shake it. You can't have all office buildings and no housing and think that you're going to solve the problem. And lastly, we need to do things like making biking safe. I wish I've got a person that's living with me now, I'd like to have them be able to ride their bike. I can't do it in good conscience because it's not safe, and I can't do it because I have 2 kids, and they're old enough, but I just feel like it's not fair to my family to ride a bike in Sunnyvale. It's too dangerous. And lastly, we need to really work on intelligent smart city solutions. I work for a company that works in this area, and we can't just have stoplights on one street that are monitored. It's a cumulative solution that we need to adopt.
Thank you very much, candidate Grossman. And we'll move on to candidate Mason Fong.
So there's lots of policy that I want to pursue. By 2020, we're supposed to switch to VMT, vehicle miles traveled, from level of service, equal analysis, LOS. And what that does is that incentivizes high-density development in transit-oriented locations like Warren Station. I also want to increase access to alternative forms of transportation. The City of Mountain View is looking at Wisman Station to be able to see how we can make biking more friendly in that area. Even here on Maud Avenue, LinkedIn has looked at expanding their bike lane system and even paying $3 million to do traffic improvements here. So utilizing public and private partnerships to be able to really work on our infrastructure. When a business wants to invest in our community, we should say yes and study it and make sure that we get the best deal for our city and our residents. Mixed-use development, I have a city planning degree. I work for a council member where I do planning right now, and I also staff my council member when he goes to the DTA Board of Directors. So one is making sure Sunnyvale has the best system, but also lobbying to our state leaders to put in the rules so that we can make it so that Sunnyvale is not at a competitive disadvantage if we lead in the policy, but that we make sure that we switch to VMT, Santa Clara switches to VMT, Cupertino switches to VMT. So I'm honored to be endorsed by our state environmental leaders, former Assembly Member Rich Gordon, current State Senator Jerry Hill, and current State Assembly Member Mark Berman. I will have many conversations with them.
Thank you very much, candidate Fong. And we will move now to Mayor Hendricks.
So I should go ahead and add, I am on the DTA board. In terms of reducing emissions, first thing we need to do is we need to electrify the fleet. I think that the fleet of cars and vehicles we have out there is going to electrify before it automates. We need to add more electric charging stations, especially in rental units. It's a lot easier if you own your property to say, I want to go ahead and add solar than if you are a renter there. We need to add more housing near near transit. And that includes mixed-use development, which pretty much everywhere you see development going on in the city of Sunnyvale, or there are a lot of it is mixed-use development. We did make our roadways more efficient, and we've already started to do that on Matilda. We put in smart streetlight technology, which has reduced the travel time by over 40%, and we're looking to do the same thing on El Camino. You have to make the existing roadway more efficient. We have to make it easier to bike and walk. Building construction, things that have been built in the last few years are being built to higher standards. Most of your commercial buildings are being built to gold or platinum, LEED, and the green building for standards for residential buildings continue to go up. And then we mentioned about VMT and LOS. The city of Sunnyvale is going to continue to look at both. VMT just does look at vehicle miles traveled, but if you don't look at LOS, which is what happens at signals, you're not dealing with the congestion aspect of what goes on. So you have to continue to look at both of those things. Thank you.
And that is the end of our first question for climate change. Our second question for climate change will begin with Chair 3, our council member Gustav Larsson. So the second question is, climate change has begun and is accelerating. For Sunnyvale, this means we'll have to contend with sea level rise from the bay and the potential flooding both from the bay and also the less frequent but much heavier rains. What would you do to protect our citizens from these imminent threats?
Thank you. So there are two different areas that I think we have to talk about separately. One is near the bay, so north of 101 and 237. And then the other area would be inland along the creeks, like along Stevens Creek and flood control channels. So even though we think of Sunnyvale as being flat, actually right here where we sit is about 70 feet above sea level. So there's a very definite slope to Sunnyvale, and so the sea level rise will impact the Moffett Park area the most. The area that's going to be most affected is our water pollution control plant, also known as a sewage treatment plant, because we want to put that at the lowest point in the city so that everything flows downhill there. So as we're rebuilding that right now, we're actually putting a flood wall around that, taking into account potential sea level rise over the lifetime of that project. And we're already seeing, as new offices are being built, some of those are being elevated up several feet to get them out of the floodplain as well, because developers want to protect their investment of tens of millions of dollars. They see this coming. I was also very proud to support Measure AA in 2016 to provide a funding stream for wetlands in the South Bay to buffer us from sea level rise. And inland, especially along Stevens Creek Trail, I would work with the Santa Clara Valley Water District, who has flood control responsibility for erosion control to make sure that water can flow safely to the bay in a large rainstorm event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Gustav Larsson. And we'll move to candidate John Cordes.
So I consider climate change to be an existential threat to humanity. It's way up there for me. And I've been calling for action on it since 2005. So I'm one of the many people in Sunnyvale that's very frustrated at the rate we've been making progress on this issue, and we need to do a lot more. One of the things being doing what you can to get sensible federal policy going forward again. I argued for SB 100, which is a law that requires 100% renewable energy in Sunnyvale. So that's one of the things I did to try and get to address climate change. Again, is we need to get to 100% renewable energy. Like Mr. Larsson, I was an advocate for Measure AA in 2016 to get the Restore the Bay parcel tax passed so that we have a steady form of funding to make improvements to protect us from and promote climate adaptation. There's lots of studies being done to across the area, some of them by the Bay Delta Conservation Development Commission, ABAG, Santa Clara Valley Water District. So there's lots of people studying this issue, and it's definitely going to take a regional approach. So I'm more than willing, I have the time to go to meetings on days of the week, to attend regional meetings, and I want to be a regional partner for Sunnyvale to engage in other commissions to do that kind of work. I know lots of people on the Santa Clara Valley Water District. They are our flood protection agency, and they are actively working on increasing all of our stream flood protection areas to 100-year levels, hopefully 100 years from now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, candidate Cordes. We'll move now to candidate Josh Grossman.
So I'd start by answering the question by saying, what have we done? Well, I'd say we've not done enough. Why are we building Moffett Park when many believe that that's going to be subject to climate change and flooding? That's basically inarguable. If you look at a New York Times report in 2018, they argued that a range of 40 would be increasing the range of area land that's going to be subject to flooding via climate change is going to go from 48 to 166 square miles. And of course, that includes the Moffett Park area. So we really need to make real concrete actions to mitigate this issue. And one way to do it is to make sure that we're stopping on the overbuilding of that area. Not only is it going to impact our traffic and all these other issues, but those that ignore history, as often said, are doomed to repeat it. Sunnyvale has had flooding issues in the past, and we're setting ourselves up for problems that could easily be avoided by making sure we have a development plan that makes sense for this area. And finally, I agree that at the federal and state level, we have to have sensible solutions to address this, but really for us, it's an existential threat in our own community, especially in this area. And we need to make sure that we're making sensible decisions about where we develop and how. And then finally, I urge you to just look at the Public Safety Officers Association. They're literally stretched to the breaking point and are concerned about this development as well. And that goes above and beyond the climate change issue.
Thank you very much, candidate Grossman. And we'll move now to candidate Mason Fong.
Yes, I think number one is definitely making sure that we have smart development. Like Councilmember Larsson said, there are certain areas in our city that are more vulnerable than others, and we need to hold those areas to higher standards. We also need to make sure that we look at history as an example. We just had a flood this past year in a city down south, and then the water district and the city were pointing fingers at each other, and the residents are really the ones who suffered, right? And so we need to learn from that. be proactive, look at a plan, and make sure that our public safety is able to attend to that plan. And I think that public safety has done a great job of having an emergency response plan, but they train to deal with fire and things like that, but we haven't necessarily looked at floods. And so that's something where it would be a multifaceted approach to make sure, one, we have an emergency response plan and citizens are educated. Two, we have smart development. And three, we're advocating to our members of Congress. Luckily, I have worked for both members of Congress for the past 4 years. And so I will have conversations with Congressman Ro-Khanna, with Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, with Congressman Zoe Lofgren to make sure we have a regional approach to this issue and that we're doing our part as a city to lead in local policies, elevate that to the state level, and elevate that to the federal level.
Thank you very much, candidate Fong. We'll move now to Mayor Glenn Hendricks.
Yeah, it really starts with some of the things that we've been doing. We have to continue to protect the environment. The things we've done in terms of greenhouse gas reductions with Silicon Valley Clean Energy and the other things that we're going to be doing as part of our CAP 2.0 plan. We also have to be advocating with our local surrounding cities, because not all the other cities around us are doing as much as what we're doing. So Sunnyvale is not, whatever we do is not going to be enough to try and do it. We have to, if we're the seed, it has to continue to grow out. In terms of direct sea level rise and what's going to happen along the bay, that is a regional issue. The city of Sunnyvale is not going to solve it alone. We're not going to build our own little wall just around the city of Sunnyvale. We have to work regionally with the other city partners here. I have a very good working relationship with our other council members and mayors in other cities. I sit on regional boards today already. But we have to work with Sacramento. And it's going to have to be a Bay Area piece of how we go ahead and look at this to protect the entire bay. Because you can't just put up a wall or marshland protection only just on Sunnyvale. You've got, what about Mountain View? What about Milpitas of what goes on? You have to look at this in a very much in a holistic way and being able to get Sacramento on board with this. I'm not convinced that we're going to get federal support on this. It really needs to be also the Bay Area governments, much to what Councilman Larsson said about the region and the funding measure that we're already starting to put in place. Because the first piece is not a seawall, but it's how to go ahead and protect the marshes that are around the edges of the bay.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hendricks. And we move now to candidate Henry Alexander III.
Okay. I think that the city has made some really positive steps with the climate action plan in regards to this matter. And with the threat of floods coming that could be 26 times a year, something obviously needs to be addressed. Now, other cities are beginning to build sea walls and levees in order to try to mitigate some of this and get some relief. And I know that Chair Patton from the Sustainability Commission presented an adaptation of the Climate Action Plan, which I think birthed the Climate Action Plan 2.0 workshop, if I'm not mistaken. But now, to use a term of where I work at, it's time to ship. You know, we need to really think about what it's going to take to make a plan, communicate that plan, implement the plan, socialize the plan, and share it. We can't sit around anymore and think that, oh, if we do it tomorrow, something's going to change. You know, what I've seen is that even though there has been words that said that we work with other cities, I've seen situations as with the Apple project that I think we could work much better with our neighboring cities. So I'd like to be more confident with that, and when I'm elected, I'll make sure that I work with other people to make sure that we are addressing this type of issue.
Thank you very much, candidate Alexander III. And that is the last topic we'll have on our climate. We're moving on to topic 2, everybody's favorite subject here. We've heard it mentioned a number of times, transportation and traffic. So question number 1 from transportation and traffic, we'll begin with candidate John Cordes. And this is a fairly large setup for the question, so bear with us here. There are many innovations in transportation coming to Sunnyvale. By 2022, we'll have electrification of Caltrain with added capacity and frequency. We will also have pilots for on-demand autonomous ride-sharing, We're beginning to see more forms of personal transport, such as electric bikes and scooters, that add to our traditional modes of pedestrian, car, bus, and bicycle. This year, Sunnyvale will have an opportunity to influence Caltrain's direction for decades to come through their public outreach. Sunnyvale has 2 Caltrain stations, downtown and Lawrence. So the question is, as part of our transit solutions, how do you see Sunnyvale maximizing newer forms of transit and integrating multiple modes of transit to connect anyone from ages 8 to 80, since we all have many places to go, to get from our homes to work, to shops, to school, to events? How do we get there and back again? Candidate Cordes.
Thank you. So I've served for 5 years on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. I'm also on the Sierra Club's Bay Area Transportation Committee, and I've served on the Sierra Club's Sustainable Land Use Commission. So all those bodies focus on this issue all the time of how we do this. I want to start by talking about the safety issues of 8 to 80. I've done 2 actions in this area. I was one of the original people that got age-friendly Sunnyvale motion started, and we took that to City Council, and City Council approved it, so now Sunnyvale is doing a better job of making sure when we plan that we include how to be age-friendly from 8 to 80 in our growth. The other thing I did is, on the chair of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission, is we pushed and got the city to agree to create a Vision Zero plan to protect, make all of our roadways safer for everyone, walkers, bikers, and drivers. So that's going to drive future infrastructure decisions. So those are 2 examples of where I've tried to make Sunnyvale safer and better. Transportation is going to require regional solutions. We definitely have to partner with VTA, we have to partner with Caltrain. We're going to have to figure out how to maximize better connectivity. Everybody agrees that it's ridiculous when you have to wait from one bus to another for an hour. I think we have an opportunity with DACA's bicycles and scooter policy coming. It's going to be hopefully the end of this year. And I've recommended in the past, and I still recommend that Sunnyvale form a Transportation or Mobility Commission, like other cities have, to figure out how we do transportation better.
Thank you very much, Candidate Cordes. We'll move now to Candidate Josh Grossman.
So first and foremost, I think when we look at what's happening and the impact on our transit, everyone's probably seen the private buses for the tech companies that are in our community. I think it's important. I think it's great that they're using those, but they're on public lands. I think it's important that we have those folks pay their fair share. So I proposed with Councilmember Goldman a progressive head tax, and the money that we would use from that progressive head tax for our largest corporations would be used to fund transportation and affordable housing. So for example, the current fee that a tenant like Google or LinkedIn pays is $24,000 roughly for 2 years, and that's the max. So it's $12,000 a year. These are some of the wealthiest companies literally in the history of humankind. So I think it's only fair that they contribute to solutions that will help us alleviate our traffic concerns. Secondly, I talked a lot about the smart city. That's a way that we'll be able to have intelligent solutions using the edge and the internet, which, by the way, as you probably know, is the biggest machine that's ever been built in the history of our race. We should be leveraging that kind of technology to help solve these transportation solutions. So I think doing those 2 things will be a real step in the right direction.
Thank you very much, Candidate Grossman. We are moving now to Candidate Mason Fong. Could you? Okay.
So I actually work on this issue right now as an aide to a council member where I have looked at electric assist. Currently, Sunnyvale is only looking at electric bikes and has not expanded the scope to include other forms like electric scooters. And so that's the first thing I would really like to do, is make sure that if we cannot include it in the current study, that we expedite that study to make sure that we complete that last 2 miles to any station. We also need to do mixed-use development. We need to expedite our urban villages, which are in our land use and transportation element, to make sure that we are doing smart planning, and that when we do urban villages, those usually have community benefits to the surrounding community for traffic signal optimization. And another part is traffic signal optimization is almost done within the city, but I would like to see it expanded, if funding is available, to residential streets as well. because right now, to my knowledge, they're on major repair roads. And so I want to thank Mayor Hendricks, who will probably talk about this right after me, is that he's been pursuing the VTA Core Connectivity Program, which is the Perry Park Shuttle Program. And so those are pilot projects which the city has gone after for regional funding to experiment and say, how can we get people from one station to the other and make sure that we have multimodal transit. So transit-oriented development, utilizing new technology, smart planning, and really making sure that we have a walkable city is one of my major goals.
Thank you very much, Candidate Fong. We move now to Mayor Hendricks.
Well, I'll start where Mason ended right there. It really does have to do with planning. The city of Sunnyvale does a lot of work to lay out and decide how we're going to go ahead and plan things, where we want things to go ahead and go, what we're going to do with mixed-use development, villages, and things like that. The planning we're doing for Perry Park and how that's going to be able to use the shuttle. And the planning that we're going to go ahead and do to take a look at what's going to happen on El Camino Real and the new planning that happens there. But it's really going to be to the different modes of transportation you talked about. It's going to be a combination of all of those things. There's not going to be one single bullet that goes ahead and says, here, this is going to magically fix our transit challenges. We need more housing along our transit corridors. And as I said, we need to use the different ways of getting around, making our existing roadways more efficient so that they go ahead and move. Go ahead and continue to look at bike lanes in appropriate spots within the city for where we can go ahead and let people bike if that's the choice that they want to go ahead and make. Make it easier for people to walk for how they want to do that. You make walking easier by what's happening with mixed-use development. Who's excited about what's happening with downtown? In fact, that it's almost there, and the housing's going to be there, shops are going to be there, restaurants are going to be there, housing's going to be there. That's an example of how we've gone ahead and laid out and planned. You know, by the way, it's sitting right next to the Caltrain station, so people can get up and down south on the peninsula. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hendricks. And now we move to candidate Henry Alexander III.
I guess sorry, I won't be so loud, first of all. I guess I'll start off with this. I think where we need to look at it as, Sunnyvale's obviously going to have to put serious effort into this, but by continuing to keep adding to the problem with the consistent improving of every development project that comes to council, it's not helping the situation. That's just the bottom line. So what I foresee happening in our city is that beyond the smart signal lights, what's happening is, excuse me, there's a system called VANET. It's called VANET Vehicular Ad Hoc Network, which is a self-sufficient, self-organizing wireless communication network which permits vehicle communications between nearby vehicles and fixed equipment. Now, what we're looking at is probably to look at these types of things in order to mitigate what traffic mess that has been caused by the consistent approval of developments. Now, I guess we can also look at cities like San Jose, who have made a big effort in having rentable bicycles and rentable scooters and things like that, so that it's promoted as something not only as fun, but also environmentally friendly. And I think that we can make the push to the city and also the residents so that we can start at an early age to say, hey, this is something that you should do and take responsibility, and there's an option for you to do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Candidate Alexander. And our last on this one is Councilmember Gustav Larsson.
Thank you.
There we go. Thank you. So as the mayor said, Sunnyvale has a long tradition of smart planning. By the time a plan or a project gets to city council, that's just the end of a very long process. We do a lot of public outreach, there's a lot of discussion, a lot of staff talking with many different folks, bringing many different perspectives together. I was very proud to be a supporter of not only transit-oriented development, but the village center concept that other candidates have mentioned, where we take old, aging shopping centers, neighborhood shopping centers with acres of parking, revitalize them with apartments up above, keeping the retail, the shopping down below. It adds built-in clients for the stores there. It also lets people downsize if they want to move out of their single-family home but still stay in the neighborhood. There are a lot of benefits to that, so I was very proud to include that in our general plan update. It's very important that we support more options for people getting around. I think as we're starting to look at scooters and other rideshare, for example, we'll need curb space for rideshare drop-off, parking space for scooters. We're jumping on these trends so that we are masters of our destiny, so that the scooters don't happen to us, but that we control how that works out. Also, the BTA shuttle for the Peary Park and downtown area, I've been very supportive of that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kennedy. Councilmember Larsson. Okay, we move now to our second question in transportation and traffic. We will begin with candidate Josh Grossman. The question is, Sunnyvale is making traffic more efficient through artificial intelligence signal control, yet traffic is still awful. What additional steps can we take to mitigate congestion?
Well, as I mentioned, as part of my company work and my day job, we work on smart city technology with a whole variety of the largest companies that are in this space. And one thing you have to do to start is not have a solution that's piecemeal. So solutions where you're having intelligence built into one street or you're managing one street, that's not really going to work, because there's a whole variety of technologies that are coming together that Henry also kind of alluded to with 5G, which is the new wireless technology. We're going to be able to have edge computing devices, including cars and medical devices and all sorts of different things that are going to allow us to really radically transform the way we manage the traffic in our city. And we need to have a real push to do this. It's not something that we can wait to do. And if we do it, we can have, I think, very good results. However, that's just one part of the solution. The other part is, as has been said before, if you're digging a hole, the first thing you need to do is stop. And that means that we don't build any more office buildings without housing to manage. Every time we do that, we're exacerbating the problem. I was on 237 today, and I usually have a reverse commute, and had to go the commute method, and it took me, the main commute, it took me 20 minutes roughly to go less than 2 miles. And that's only going to get worse if we stay on our current course.
Thank you very much, candidate Grossman. We'll move on to candidate Mason Fong.
So everything I said in the last response, but adding to that,
Mason, I'm sorry, could you?
I apologize. So to adding to that, I think really formalizing our technology initiatives. Right now we do it piecemeal, but I would love to see a formal smart cities initiative where we bring on a team that really can expedite this work. Another thing is just focusing on our urban villages. If we can make those village centers a place where people really want to organize and commute to, we can reduce regional traffic. We also need to work across city lines. I live in the Rainer Park area, and I have to go down Wolf to get to 280 to drive south. And every morning that commute is very, very, very difficult. And so urban villages will provide those community benefits where we can traffic signal optimize and things like that. Again, VMT, I really believe that yes, it will incorporate a standard for level of service, but that will make sure that future development has the most minimal impact on us. I would love to see development at a transit-oriented station where we can have zero parking. I think that is a great concept that I would love to see materialize in Sunnyvale more of. And another thing is just that we need to get people out of their cars. We rely heavily on Caltrain, our 2 county expressways, our El Camino, but Caltrain electrification is going to take a while. BART may or may not get to Santa Clara. And so we have to think contingency. How are we going to really look at getting people in the south to where they need and people in the north to where they need? And I've lived in North Sunnyvale, I've lived in South Sunnyvale, and I've seen different issues, and I really, really am looking forward to working on this issue.
Thank you very much, candidate Fong. We move now to Mayor Hendricks.
The first thing I want to say is BART will get to Santa Clara. It's really about continuing what we're doing, how we're doing planned development near transit. That's what we want to do, both housing and business and retail. Examples of how we're doing that is on El Camino. Examples of how we're doing that is the downtown. Examples of Perry Park development, which is right between Caltrain and the light rail stations. It's designed to be able to take advantage of that, and the shuttle will go ahead and provide connections with those things. Some people keep mentioning about housing. Yes, we need to build much more housing. But in the 2018 grand jury report, it lists and says the city of Sunnyvale has a jobs to housing ratio of 1 to 1.07, one of the best in the county. There's a lot more that we need to do, and we've been doing it, and we will continue to do it. But Sunnyvale has been doing a lot for housing to try and deal with this. And the last piece is in the developments and what we do with traffic demand management plans. It was mentioned about here, the company buses are on the road. The company buses take cars off the streets. And the companies that are going ahead and putting these people into the offices, they want to be able to try and reduce. They want to make it easier for their employees to get there. They want to make it easier for everybody else to be on the road. They are trying to be part of the solution.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hendricks. We move now to candidate Henry Alexander.
Okay. So I'll start this off to say that when I'm elected, I will make sure that we do promote more bicyclist participation, but only when we fix the traffic. And when we fix the traffic is going to be when we stop making all these development decisions. Now, I'm going to be perfectly frank with all of you here. If we learned anything from the last election, we saw that the people of Sunnyvale, which I've talked to, the families are very sick and tired of all the traffic and all the development. So much so that Measure M almost passed, and the incumbents who were running for office also were voted out because of the fact that there was a consistent voting for more development. And this is what this council has done. I think that by creating more development has impacted what we've had here, which is more traffic, and now we have to address the issue of now we need more housing. So when does it stop? We have to at some point pull back, and when I'm elected, I will pull back on a lot of these developments. I'm not saying there's going to be no growth, because that makes no sense. Growth has to happen, but we need to pull back on it some in order to make sure that we have a proper grip of what we have here, which is a traffic problem. On the way here, I saw an emergency vehicle trying to get through traffic on Wolf, and it couldn't get through. Why? Because it was bumper-to-bumper traffic. Minutes, seconds mean everything in people's lives, and I think that's what we need to address.
Thank you very much, candidate Alexander III. Moving now to Council Member Gustav Larsson.
Yeah, so thank you very much. So a lot of the traffic that we experience here in Sunnyvale is actually pass-through traffic. It is not starting in Sunnyvale, it's not ending in Sunnyvale, but it's passing through Sunnyvale. This traffic is really a regional issue. And even if Sunnyvale were to close up shop and not build anything more, we actually still have all the other growth going on in this area, which affects Sunnyvale. And we actually have people moving into Sunnyvale whether or not we build new housing. During the almost 5 years I've been on council, I've gone from hearing stories of 2 families, sometimes 3 families in one house or apartment, to now sometimes 4 or 5 families consistently. And so that's why we really have to continue addressing housing. That's part of the transportation solution. For bicycles, we're updating our bicycle master plan right now. We need to look at how do we fix the gaps, how do we close the gaps in our bicycle network that will encourage people to bike more if they have a safe, continuous route to get to their destination. Continue working on our Safe Routes to School program to help with our school children. And again, I'll come back to the idea of a multi-city transportation management agency, because this is we need a regional solution, so working with other cities on best practices and actually being more competitive for transportation grants by collaborating together regionally. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Gustav Larsson. And we will move now to candidate John Cordes.
Thank you. So one of the things we need to do to work on congestion is to fund it somehow, how we're going to do these improvements. So I'm in favor of increasing the traffic impact fees we charge developers. Sunnyvales are not high in the region, and so we're leaving a lot of money on the table by not increasing the traffic impact fees. The same thing with the business license fees. Josh talked about it earlier, right? we need to provide these transportation solutions, and we need these businesses to pay for them because they're the ones that are driving the problem. One of the things we need to do is require higher mode shift. So, for example, how many people out of 100 are allowed to use the car to get to work solo? In the Perry Park specific plan, it's 80 out of 100, right? So only 1 out of 5 is required to get there some other way. But for example, in the Apple Campus 2, it's 1 out of every 3 people has to get to work without driving a car. And in the new North Bayshore plan that got approved in Mountain View, it's 1 out of every 2 people has to figure out how to get to work without driving a car. So we have to get much more aggressive in setting higher requirements for new developments to not allow people to drive solo. Another thing we need to do is we need to build more housing that's been talked about, more TOD housing. Also, we need to slow development down. We need to give ourselves time to build infrastructure for transportation. I'm not taking any money from developers. I want to slow the growth of buildings down. I've been advocating for incremental development caps like Sunnyvale did in the Lawrence Area Station Plan. I advocated it for in the Perry Park Plan, and I'm advocating for it in the general plan.
Thank you very much. Candidate John Curtis. Thank you, candidates, for keeping your time. I appreciate that very much. And you can take a quick breath now, a couple of breaths anyway. We're going to submit the candidate questions from the audience. So if you have questions that you've written, please pass them to the central aisle, and they will be collected by, looks like Ms. Lute will be collecting those. This is your last chance to write a question. They will be sorted by category, and they will be used for lightning rounds for our candidates. Last opportunity to put in questions. So this is, we won't be collecting them again after this. Okay. We have a question.
What happened to the housing topic?
That's the next 2.
We're not done yet.
You're not, okay, you're
Oh, we're not done yet. I beg your pardon. Thank you. We're stopping, we're right about in the middle. And so we're stopping to collect all the questions so they can be sorted, so we have them ready for our lightning rounds at the end of our program today. So that's thank you very much for bringing that up. Okay, so any last minute collections here? Okay, then we will be moving on to our next third and final topic that we have here. Housing affordability and renter protections. So question number 1 from the housing affordability topic will begin with candidate Mason Fong. So housing experts have said that for the last couple of decades, the Bay Area has added between 8 and 10 times the amount of jobs that homes built. How and where do we build the housing that we need to house our teachers, police, and others of median income, which is right now in our area about $110,000 a year? Do that with land prices among the highest in the nation and still rising.
Yeah, so I'm so happy that this question is my question. Again, I'm running on access, right? And workforce housing is very dear to my heart. I've been working on this issue for my council member and for both Congressman Mike Honda and Congressman Ro Khanna in terms of how do we make sure that, 1, we can build the housing, 2, we have the location where we need it. Transit-oriented development is a very key focus in city planning. And so Lawrence Station, downtown, El Camino are really places that the city is already focusing on and that I will keep a steady hand on. But also, we really need to make sure that we're looking at how competitive our city is to attract a workforce. We lost our main housing policy person to the city of Santa Cruz, and we've been losing staff consistently. And so that's a big issue, is we need to take advantage of our resources. The County of Santa Clara is putting up funds for workforce housing. The state legislature passed a couple of bills that are also putting up funds. And so I have no doubt that our city staff is going to go after those funds, but we really need to get the supply up so we can get the costs down. And so that's why I'm a big advocate of diversifying our housing stock, because we need to look at different AMI levels to make sure we address the missing middle. And so what that means is that we need to have an action plan that addresses specifically the missing middle, because I think a lot of times we focus on BMR, or we focus on market rate, but we forget about the middle part. And so I will do that as a council member.
Thank you very much, candidate Mason Fong. And we move now to Mayor Glenn Hendricks.
So before I answer that question, I just want to go ahead, the comment was made earlier about that now we need to start address housing. The city of Sunnyvale has been addressing housing for decades. We've had inclusionary housing fees, and we've been working on this problem for a long time. This is not a new problem for the city of Sunnyvale to work on. It was mentioned about in Mountain View, and they have very aggressive goals in north of 101. They want to build 10,000 units. They have so many rules in place, nobody's bothered to issue a permit, to ask for a permit because it can't be done. You have to be careful about the rules you put in place. So how and where do we build? So we're going to build housing on El Camino. We're building housing downtown. We're going to build housing by the Lawrence area station. The big AMD old site is going to get redeveloped into housing. Google, as part of their building out in North Sunnyvale, they've asked for the city, as part of taking a look at the specific plan amendments, to put and add housing out there. These are all places we're looking at this. The city of Sunnyvale, in multiple locations, has provided land. Land is the key thing to be able to go ahead and build housing. So the city of Sunnyvale is providing land to go ahead and build lower income housing. And then where will funding come to try and help with some of this? Hopefully it was you guys, but in the last election, Measure A, $950 million that the county voters voted to go ahead and tax ourselves to go ahead and make available to try and help build low-cost housing and housing for homeless. So those are the kind of things that we're doing, and those are things that are in place, and we need to continue to make sure that they happen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hendricks. So now we move to candidate Henry Alexander III.
So, and I will agree with Mayor Hendricks. We do have quite a bit of housing that's coming up, and quite a bit of development as well. And I believe that the amount that is being built is obviously going to put a dent in it, but the question is about what the housing for teachers, police, people like that should be. And I think that the city needs to look into that, because these are the resources that mean the most for our city. Now, when you look at the cost of homes in a certain area in a city, what are things that drive that up? So it's usually going to be good schools, good safety, and access, right? Also, good weather doesn't hurt. And that's why we live in Sunnyvale. That's why we live in the city of the sun, or the Vale of the Sun, right? So all these things are not going to change unless we continue to overgrow. And we've seen communication from the Sunnyvale public safety officers who have mentioned it as well, that businesses are being built at too fast a rate for them to accommodate it. So again, I think it's really about what are we going to do about what the situation that we have is. My background is in operations, so when I see a bad process, I cringe. So for me, I think it's really about making sure that once we have something in place, that we're doing it the right way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, candidate Alexander III. We are now moving on to council member Gustav Larsson.
As the mayor mentioned, Sunnyvale has long had a very strong housing program. And our affordable housing programs, I will say that plural, affordable housing programs, have been acknowledged as leaders in the region. If you go to housing departments in other cities around here, they will say they look to Sunnyvale as a leader for developing affordable housing. And so I'm very proud to build on top of that tradition. A couple things we have already done. We have expanded and increased development fees that we charge on new developments, and we've also started to add affordable housing as part of the menu of community benefits. When a developer asks to build something a little bit bigger, we have a list of asks ready to go and say, okay, we can talk to you about that. Here are the things that you need to look at providing, and one of those is additional affordable housing. So I think that's very important. I'm proud that on the El Camino precise plan, I made the motion to consider zoning for even more housing than was being considered. And we've all talked about the need for more housing here, but I think we also have to acknowledge the construction costs are going up, and especially with the tariffs that the federal government is putting in place, that's making it even harder to build. And so one thing the city can do is to help affordable housing developers with the land acquisition process. And I see I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Larsson. Now we move to candidate John Cordes.
All right, so, is this one on? This is there you go. Thank you for the reset on the clock. All right, so I talked about it earlier. To provide more median income housing, one thing to do is slow down the growth of office buildings. One of the things that's really gotten me going is when the city of Sunnyvale approved the Perry Park specific plan in 2016, it allowed 2 million more square feet of office space. Now this plan was supposed to take 20 years to finish. Here we are, 23 months later, and 1.8 million square feet, which is like 5,000 jobs, has already been permits filled. Right? We've got to slow down the growth of office buildings, or we're never going to be able to catch up with the housing. Right? That's the only way to fix the jobs housing imbalances. We've got to slow the growth of the jobs down to be able to have time to build the housing. Sunnyvale is doing better than everybody else in the region of building housing. I applaud Sunnyvale for that, but we're like at 30% of the affordable housing number, and everybody else is at like 5%. And for the current cycle, which is a 7-year cycle, we're at 5% of the target for affordable housing we're supposed to build. We're in the end of year 2. So I can't say that we're really doing great as far as building affordable housing, but we're trying a lot harder than other cities, and I'm very grateful for that. I think Sunnyvale's done a good job of deciding where housing should go, right? We're doing a lot of industrial to residential conversions. There's going to be 1 million new homes at where 1AMD Place is, where Stewart and Wayne meet, next to El Camino Real. Where Stewart and Wayne meet next to the Lawrence Expressway. I think we're going to change the rules for ADU units, which I support. We need to make it more easy for people to add ADUs in their yards and increase the affordable housing impact fees.
Thank you very much, Candidate John Cordes. We move now to candidate Josh Grossman.
First and foremost, as an executive, I've learned you need to go for the low-hanging fruit. And this is protecting the current affordable housing stock that we have. And that is the mobile home parks that we have. So that's 4,800 housing units. And I see, I feel the same way you do. These folks have been waiting for years and years and years. Many of them are on the very edge of homelessness because we've got hedge funds that are buying these parks and trying to convert them. And the easy solution is people have different feelings about rent control. I understand that. But we at least need to have it go to a vote of the people of Sunnyvale. Some people ask me why I don't wear a tie to these events, and I'm the only one. I'm not wearing a tie until we get mobile home rent park stabilization on the ballot. So when you see me in a bit with a tie, you'll know why. I mean, seriously, we really need to get something done here. It's an absolute travesty that we haven't already. Secondly, we need to adopt the Palmer fix so we can have inclusionary housing for apartments. The city has dragged its feet over the last 5 years on this. It's dragged its feet on improving the 12.5% we have now as our inclusionary housing requirement. And what's worse, we take this inclusionary housing fee and use it as an in lieu of fee, and then we end up with things like Butcher's Corner, where we have a very large project that the people in the neighborhood didn't want with 0 affordable housing units. And that's just not the right way to do business in the city. And I think we can do better.
Thank you very much, Candidate Grossman. Now we are moving to the second question of housing affordability and returning to Mayor Glenn Hendricks on this question. So, did I miss?
No, they started one.
Okay.
You're right.
I beg your pardon. So, returning to Glenn Hendricks, some of the hardest hit of our affordability crisis.
Wait.
Question 6.
Did you go?
This is question 6.
Yeah.
The mayor should go for question 6 now.
Yes.
Okay.
You're right.
go ahead.
You don't need answer to that.
I can be convinced in another way. Thank you. So, Mayor Glenn Hendricks, some of the hardest hit with our affordability crisis are renters. Some are seeing rents rise as much as 10% or more in a year. Do you support renter protections? That would be rent control, rent stabilization, lease guarantee with no financial penalty, just cause eviction, or other protections for Sunnyvale renters? And if so, under what circumstances?
So yes, some of those things. In terms of, I think it was Councilmember Smith just had a study items of how we go ahead and get things looked at to see if we're going to go ahead and add them into our ordinance. To go ahead and say here that people should be allowed to have a 12-month lease. And I seconded that motion to go ahead and do that because we've heard the stories of people having their rent increased multiple times a year. Price controls, I'm not at the basic level, the city of Sunnyvale is looking at it. In terms of mobile home parks, they already have the option for long-term leases. And too bad we don't have more time, but the mobile home park that's in question here, when that company came in and first bought, the first thing that those mobile home people asked for was long-term leases because they weren't asking for it. They came and talked to me, maybe other people talked to the new owner, but I did. And within a few days after that, they had long-term leases that were being discussed and negotiated so they could go ahead and do that. Long-term leases have worked for the mobile home community for decades. It was also said here to go ahead and we should put it to the voters. There are mechanisms that can go ahead and do that, but I would also say that mobile home rent control has been voted on twice in the city of Sunnyvale and didn't pass.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hendricks, and moving now to candidate Henry Alexander III.
So I think that the lease guarantee idea from Mountain View has some very good merit, so much so, like the mayor said, it became a study issue. Now, I've been asked to endorse Prop number 1 because I support additional resources to ensure that disadvantaged people are being assisted. But I'd like to make sure that there is oversight to prevent any kind of abuse in that. So I think we want to make sure that there's no irresponsibility taking place because that's where I think that the separation starts to occur. Now, just as a disclosure, I've been a renter in Sunnyvale for 13 years, so I don't really have skin in the game like people might assume, which is home ownership. This is really about, in order to stay where I want to live, I've done those things to support my family to do that. And being someone who has said no to fancy cars and fancy clothes so I can contribute to the city that I love is going to be a good thing to me now. I don't think the solution is high density housing. I apologize for most of you who might be single issue voters. But it's also not getting rid of mobile home parks either. And you're creating more displacement to have people in situations where they need affordable housing. Yet another thing I would not have voted for. So it's one thing to put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole, but it's time to heal that. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, candidate Alexander III. We'll move now to Council Member Gustav Larsson.
Thank you. Yeah, so I strongly support the zoning that Sunnyvale has in place to protect our mobile home parks. We have an extraordinary number of mobile home parks in the city. It's a very important source of relatively affordable housing. I say relatively because I understand that those space rents are going up as well, and that's an issue for a number of people. And yet it's also more affordable than a lot of the other housing options that we have in the city. So I think it's very important that we preserve our mobile home parks. I very much support the lease guarantee. As others have said, we have a study issue coming up to take a look at that. I'm glad to see that we've been able to keep our tradition of voluntary long-term leases for mobile home parks. I think a voluntary solution is much better than a regulatory solution. With a regulatory solution, there's a lot of arguing over the details, and I think it really distracts from the real problem we have, which is not enough housing. The affordability and lack of availability of housing is a clear market signal that we do not have enough housing to meet the need. And we do talk a lot about affordability, but I'm also concerned about availability, because when your life circumstances change and you need to move, you need to be able to actually move into a place And I've heard from a lot of people who can afford the rents here, but simply can't be chosen because there is so much competition. So I think we need to be talking about the availability of housing as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Gustav Larsson. We move now to candidate John Cordes.
Hi, so I favor renters protections. I think it's important. We have a kind of a crisis situation where the amount of housing has been dramatically outstripped by the number of jobs. So I support renters protections like we've seen in San Jose. I think their ordinance is very good. I support local decision making about rental housing policy. I'm in favor, I think Sunnyvale should decide what's the best policy for us and not leave it up to Sacramento. That methodology to decide across the entire state with cost of occupancy just doesn't make sense to me. I support rent stabilization for the mobile home parks. I've been involved with the issue for a number of years now. I've been part of that organization because I have friends that live there. So yes, they have renters protection, but you need to understand what they've got, right? They've been guaranteed 7% or 4% increase for the next 5 years, but that's starting at a base of about $1,100. In year 5, it jumps to $2,200. And anybody new moving in jumps to $2,500. So they have got a long-term lease, but it's going to expire in 2022, right then, and what are they going to do? The owner's already said he's not going to extend those contracts at those low rates again, right? So anybody that's coming in is starting at $1,700, and these people, most of them are on limited income or Social Security. They cannot afford to have 7% increases for 5 years in a row. Then it's just going to force them out. So I'm in favor of rent stabilization for them. Ideally, we should find some way to have the parks be purchased by them with loans or something so they can make their own decisions about what the rent should be.
Thank you very much, candidate Cordes. And now we move to candidate Josh Grossman.
So if getting long-term leases along the lines of what we saw at Plaza Del Rey is helping these folks, that's not going to help they don't need, because they're going to be kicked out of the park at the end of that lease. So that's just simply not where we need to go. So as I mentioned, the first thing we need to do is get the mobile home park rent stabilization on the ballot. There's no reason why we shouldn't do it. As a member of Livable Sunnyvale, I'm concerned that that hasn't been something that's been acted on. And it was mentioned that, well, there's methods to go to do this. Yeah, there are methods to go to do it, but it costs thousands and thousands of dollars to get something on the ballot. And these are folks who, in many cases, not all, these are people who are struggling. These are people, in some cases that I've met, that have to make decisions between whether they're going to get their medicine or whether or not they're going to pay their rent, which keeps going up. These are people that have lived there for 50 years. These are people that have 2 jobs, one job to pay for their gas and another job so that they can go to where they work. So the idea that they're going to become politically involved, they don't get help from the mobile home park owners to pay for political campaigns. They're not able to go to PACs. They're not able to talk to developers and get large donations like some of the folks on the council do. This is something that we have a moral imperative to help them, and we need to see it done sooner rather than later. And I also support other renter protections like a minimum of a 12-month lease.
Thank you very much, candidate Grossman. We move now to candidate Mason Fong.
So I am a renter. I make $54,000 a year, and I'm wondering how I'm going to stay in Sunnyvale. But for me, I don't want to close the door behind me. And so if I'm going to get lower rent, but I'm going to make housing more difficult to build because construction costs are up and financing is harder to attain, I do not want to make sure that the kids that are going to Fremont High School now, the kids that are going to Homestead High School, when they come back, that they're not going to have a place to live. And so for me, that is my biggest concern about rent control is how do you target it? Can you target it based on income? Currently, no. So a Google engineer who's making $150,000 a year could get rent control. I don't think that's a smart policy to implement currently. But I really want to focus on other types, like workforce housing. Utilizing those state grants, utilizing those county grants to figure out where we can place them, increasing our upzoning, our areas of transit-oriented development. And I'm really honored to be endorsed by the South Bay Labor Council, the Sunnyvale Employees Association, the part-time workers of Sunnyvale, who are struggling with these issues. I'm the only candidate running for C3 that has the sole endorsement of our unions.
Thank you very much, candidate Mason Fong. That is the last question we have on our housing. We're moving now to the penultimate segment of our program, which is questions submitted from the audience. So these will be the lightning rounds. These will be 30 seconds responses for each of the candidates. They have been graciously sorted and put in order here for priorities of what the coalition is interested in. So with the lightning rounds, question 1 will begin with candidate Henry Alexander III. And the question is, these are now 30 seconds each for your responses. So get ready for that. What are your first 3 priorities for bike path or trail improvements for Sunnyvale?
The first 3 priorities would be to make sure that we look at the current traffic flow so that there can actually be safety for bicycle paths. Once we do that, then I would like to socialize it and advertise it within the city if we don't do a good job at communicating enough to citizens about what would make most sense for the city at large. So step number 3 would be to make sure that these are incentivized actions for all the residents in Sunnyvale.
Thank you very much, candidate Henry Alexander III. Now we will move on to Council Member Gustav Larsson. Again, a 30-second answer.
Okay. So the first thing is to fill in the gaps in our bicycle network. And as I said, we're working on our bicycle master plan right now to identify and prioritize which gaps to fill in first. In addition to that, we really need to look at connections to neighboring cities so that it's not just bicyclists within Sunnyvale. There are a lot of people that go Sunnyvale to Mountain View or Cupertino or Santa Clara. And then finally, pushing forward on the Stevens Creek Trail, a separated bike path that's off the streets. Thank you.
Moving now to candidate John Cordes. Thank you very much, Councilmember Gustav Larsson.
I'm ready. Okay, so I've been involved in bicycling for a while. Like I said, it's my 5th year on the Bicycle Pedestrian Commission. One of the things I've also done is spent 2 years working on the Safe Routes to School Coalition, trying to figure out how to make it easier and safer for kids to get to school. So I would prioritize the Safe Routes to Schools initiatives. Also, I want to say that 3 times in the last couple of years, BPAC has recommended full-time bike lanes on various streets to the City Council, and 3 times they voted no. So this is not a council that's very supportive of biking. If you want to support the council biking, elect us.
Thank you very much, candidate John Cordes. And moving now to candidate Josh Grossman.
So first and foremost, I worked with Mayor Siegel on a corridor between Mountain View and Sunnyvale. That's the first thing we can do, using railway rights of way. So that's an important and relatively easy fix that we should be working with him on. Number 2, we need to make our streets safer. There's been 2 kids hit recently in our area at local schools, and there have been something like 6 hit at local high schools over the last number of years, and that's just simply too dangerous. And then lastly, we need to have an approach that works with other cities to solve this problem.
Thank you very much, candidate Grossman. We'll move now to candidate Mason Fong.
So yeah, I agree. Filling in the gaps with our bike master plan in collaboration with our Vision Zero plan, and also on something that I work for my council member, Safe Routes to School. Second thing, finishing Lisbon Corridor Station to do an underpass. The third thing, making sure that we really look at public-private partnerships. As I mentioned before, Maud Avenue, LinkedIn wants to work on it, and they've received pushback from city staff. I've heard both sides, and it looks like it's still a discussion that's up for debate. And so I'm on the council, and it's still an issue. I'll work hard on that.
Thank you very much, candidate Mason Fong. Now moving to Mayor Glenn Hendricks.
This would be my list, but it's all about how you prioritize and get a consensus from the council. But it would be to go ahead and continue to expand Stevens Creek Trail, expand and get the East Trail, or the East Channel piece done. Bike lanes on El Camino. The city of Sunnyvale is the first city to have a segment of El Camino have bike lanes. And then we also need to go ahead and get the Bernardo underpass done.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will start the next segment, the next round, the next question. We'll begin with Councilmember Gustav Larsson. So that is, do you accept developer or developer PAC contributions? Presumably to your
So I accept contributions from a wide range of contributors. They are residents of Sunnyvale. Some are residents of other cities. Some of them are developers. A handful of them are PACs. In at least one case, it's a city resident who actually happens to be a developer as well. So those groups are not mutually exclusive. I also use a lot of volunteers. In fact, most of my workers are volunteers all the time. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Larsson. And we move now to candidate John Portis.
So the very short answer is no. I'm not accepting any funds from any of those people. I'm a grassroots candidate. I want to represent the homeowners in Sunnyvale. I'm trying to slow the growth of office buildings. It's on my flyers, on the cable, it's on my website. I'm the only candidate in C3 saying that. So if you want to slow the growth of, and do a better job of housing balance, vote for John Portis in C3.
Thank you very much, candidate Portis. We will move now to candidate Josh Grossman.
No, I don't accept any developer money whatsoever. I only take individual contributions. And I just add that two of the incumbents have received independent expenditures of $70,000 from the National Association of Realtors, and between $159,000 and $164,000. That's, I don't know what's happening with the time there, Richard, I'm gonna keep going. So what that means is that's roughly $1,000 for each person in Sunnyvale, and that's just simply has a corrosive effect on our government.
Thank you very much,
Hold on
candidate
one
Grossman.
This thing is apparently turned off.
Okay, we will now move to candidate Mason Fong.
We're going to do this the analog way, which is I'm going to watch my wristwatch, and I'll do this when you're running low on time. Right? And ready?
Dash. So I do accept a wide variety of contributions, and I'm really honored to be endorsed by many different variety of people. Unions believe in me, businesses believe in me, unions believe that I will make sure that development works for those community benefits that I talked about, of traffic signal optimization, things like that. And so I'm honored to have a wide breadth of support.
Thank you very much, candidate Fong. And we now move to Mayor Glenn Hendricks.
I want to correct a misstatement was made that independent expenditures do not go to campaigns. Those are independent, they're completely, we have nothing to do with them. Yes, I do accept campaign contributions from a wide variety of sources. The reason for that is this is a marketing and advertising campaign. We are trying to get our message out to people, and it costs money to go ahead and do that. So I accept campaign contributions, but it does not impact how I vote.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hendricks. And now we move to candidate Henry Alexander III.
I just want to be perfectly clear. First of all, no, I'm not taking PAC money or anything other than from individual residents. I don't want for people to believe that because the people up here who are taking the donations that they're getting money on the side. Politics is about favors, and I think that it was really about these people wanting it to make sure that the people that they have been taken care of are taken care of. So I don't take any money from anyone but residents.
Thank you very much, candidate Alexander III. We are now moving on to the third question of our lightning round, beginning with candidate John Portis. And the question is, can Sunnyvale become carbon neutral while effectively addressing the housing and transportation challenges? If so, how?
I need a mic. So this ties back into the earlier question. I'm a firm believer that we can get there and that we will get to being a carbon neutral city. Part of that, again, is being to increase the housing because it dramatically shortens commutes, right? And we've got to electrify everything. We've got to increase our green building standards so that they're net zero, and that's the way we can get to being a carbon neutral city.
Thank you very much, candidate Portis. Then we will move on to candidate Josh Grossman.
You ready?
Yep.
Okay. So first and foremost, we need to stop natural gas production for natural gas in any of our commercial or residential buildings. That's number one. Number two, we need to have solar on all our buildings. There's no reason why we can't do that. And number three, if we move forward with these kind of affirmative ways to, we can do it, folks. And there's a simple way to do it, and I support those two different approaches.
Thank you very much, candidate Grossman. We'll move now to candidate Mason Fong.
So yeah, I think Sunnyvale can definitely work towards carbon neutral. I want to thank the council currently because they've done a great job. We are leading in the valley, and we should be very proud of that. And so I will work very diligently, as I have under Congressman Rokana, where I was his energy staffer, and I met with Silicon Valley Clean Energy, and I tried to see how can we do CCAs nationally, how can we do more CCAs in California, and how can we organize their voice.
Thank you very much, candidate Mason Fong. And we will move now to Mayor Hendricks.
I think we can move in the direction of carbon neutral, but I tell you, it's going to get to everybody in the audience and people in the city. It's going to require a lot of behavior change. It's not about us just being able to sit up here and say, here, we can go ahead and make policies and force things to be done, because I'll tell you, people don't like that. But we have to go ahead and educate and communicate to our residents the changes and the behavior changes they're going to have to make to go ahead and treat our planet better.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hendricks. We'll move now to candidate Henry Alexander III.
If I could give Mayor Hendricks a high five, I would right now, because I completely agree. We need to really look at what it means for citizens to take the real effort to make a change here. And that's going to take the communication of people who can communicate to people. I think that is something that I've demonstrated throughout my time volunteering within Sunnyvale, and it's what I continue to want to do is that when I'm elected as city council to N1.
Thank you very much, candidate Alexander III. Now moving on for the last on this is Councilmember Gustav Larsson.
So I'm very proud that Sunnyvale is already well ahead of our state goals on reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, but we still have more work to do. We still have to move forward with that. The way that we move towards carbon neutrality is actually through addressing housing and transportation. Those are not at odds. Those goals work together. As we rebuild, we have standards for much higher energy efficiency. We also need to cluster housing near jobs and shopping to reduce the amount of traveling that people need to do and make the default choice the green choice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Larsson. We move now to question number 4 of our lightning round, and that is it time for cities like Sunnyvale to consider city-owned housing as in the UK? And I'm sorry, this will begin with candidate Josh Grossman.
I think that's a really interesting idea, and I think I've seen that in Canada as well. It's something that we need to investigate. The whys and wherefores of how we're going to be able to do it, and funding it is going to be a challenge, but I think that's a tremendous idea, and I support it wholeheartedly.
Thank you very much, candidate Grossman. We'll move now to candidate Mason Fong.
I'm very open to that idea. I would love for it to go through the study issue process, but I think a lot of the funding mechanisms would be difficult to discuss at the state level. I'm a big fan of workforce housing. I think when we look at an example like Palo Alto, where there was a mobile home that was purchased by the County of Santa Clara, I think that's an example of a public-private partnership. So I'd be very open to looking at a city way to do that, but I think right now it's being done at the county level.
Thank you very much, candidate Fong. We'll move now to Mayor Hendricks.
I'll have to say, I think the question is slightly framed wrong. We've already started doing that with the Armory site. That's city-owned land that was used and was created or used for housing. We're doing the same thing. The city has, in the last couple of years, has aggregated together half a block along Matilda and go ahead and having that property be used for special needs housing. So we're starting to do that. We're looking at how we use the land and property that we already have to do this. We should do more.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hendricks. We'll move now to candidate Henry Alexander III.
I would agree. However, my only concern would be ensuring that there's not the cycle of segregation that happens when there's city-owned property, especially when it's something that's considered low income. I don't want to create any more separations within the city if it exists. I want to see it end. And I believe that that's a byproduct of sometimes when you have city-owned housing, especially if there's any kind of caveat where there's low income involved with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, candidate Alexander III. We'll now move to Councilmember Gustav Larsson.
So the concern about segregation, that's a very real concern and something that we always think about with affordable housing, whether or not it's city-owned property. And so that's something that we have discussed repeatedly in the past, and why we strive to keep affordable housing spread throughout the city and keep it at a very high level. As the mayor mentioned, we already have city-owned property, but funding is key. The partnerships we already have leverage our funds 6-to-1 to 8-to-1, so I'm very much in support of the partnerships for the actual development.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Larsson. Moving to the last on this is candidate John Curtis.
I think it's a wonderful idea to explore public-private partnerships using city-owned land. I've talked with our police officers. We used to require that they live in the city, but since housing got so expensive, we don't require that anymore. They don't even have to live within 30 minutes of coming to the city. So that would be a great example. We know the school districts are trying to figure out how to build housing on school district land because of the same problem, right? Teachers can't afford to live here anymore. So it's definitely time for change, and I would definitely support a study to look at how and what would be the best way to use city-owned housing.
Thank you very much, candidate Curtis. Okay, that finishes our lightning rounds. Thank you all very much. We will now move on to your closing statements. And our closing statements will be 1 minute each. We will begin with candidate Mason Fong.
Well, thank you everyone for being here. I know it's a 2-hour forum and really appreciate your participation. That's what makes our civilization really progress, is that we need your ideas, and please feel free to go up to me after and ask me any questions. I'm always available. Again, my name is Mason Fong, and I'm running for Sunnyvale City Council seat 3, and I really appreciate the privilege and opportunity to answer really hard questions in 90 seconds or 30 seconds. But in all seriousness, I humbly ask for your vote today, because if you vote for me, you get experience, you get new ideas, and you get cross-collaboration across our jurisdiction. Because so many of our issues are regional: housing, transportation, protecting our environment, and I've done that work at the highest level of government and at the local council level, working for a council member. So if you value experience and you want to see Sunnyvale try to do new things to address issues we've had for decades, I really encourage you to come talk to me after, and I really hope that you will be able to support me. Again, my name is Mason Fong. I serve as the chair of the Sunnyvale Library Board of Trustees, and I ask for your vote.
Thank you very much, candidate Mason Fong. We will now move to Mayor Glenn Hendricks.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for taking a couple hours out of your evening and coming and listening to us. Housing is a very personal issue. It affects our lives every day. We've been sitting up here kind of talking from a policy perspective, but when we do that policy, we have to remember this, how it individually affects people with what goes on, and I do. Housing and transportation are very complex issues, and our time constraints here have really not allowed us to get into the complex details of this. We've really just touched on the very edge of it. I've been working the details of this for you for the last 8 years on the City Council and the Planning Commission. I understand the complexities of these issues, and I have the ability and the leadership to help bring solutions to play. I've been very fortunate to be, and honored to be your mayor for the last 2.5 years, and I'd be thankful for your support to be reelected on the council here in November.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hendricks. And moving now to candidate Henry Alexander III.
Okay, so I wanted to first let you all know that my website is Henry for Sunnyvale. It's the number 4, or the spelled out word FOR, whatever works for you. So I just want to make sure that you guys are aware. It's henryforsunnyvale.com. And in it, what you'll find is a little bit more about me, who I am as a person who has raised his family here in Sunnyvale, who is concerned about open space, who's concerned about traffic, the well-being of the citizens as a whole, and working collaboratively with people all across the lines here. I don't want for anyone to believe that we're against each other. I mean, matter of fact, Mayor Hendricks gave me this pen, so it's not as if we're going to be flying from the top rope and doing things like that. But I really want for people to understand that if you really want something that's different, that will change the course of how Sunnyvale has gone for the past several years, you should vote for me. And please look into my campaign so you can learn more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, candidate Alexander III. We'll now move to Councilmember Gustav Larsson.
So thank you all for your attention and your questions. It was very helpful to hear the questions that you are concerned about tonight. So as a council member with 8 years of combined experience on both Planning Commission and City Council, I bring both a positive vision and a record for making Sunnyvale an even better place to live and work. I have the knowledge, leadership, and experience to get things done, and I also have a grassroots background. Before I was on Planning Commission, before I was on City Council, when I worked with my neighborhood, when we successfully lobbied Council for changes, we got that done. But I remember what it's like to approach Council for the first time and not know which way is up. I've been there myself. So I very much value your opinions, and I ask for your vote on November 6th. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Gustav Larsson. We will now move to candidate John Fortis.
Thank you all for coming. I will be staying after to answer questions. I think you can see there are clear differences in the C3 candidates. I'm for slowing office growth through increased fees that we can then use to support more affordable housing and more traffic solutions, right? I'm the only one that's got a way to get there instead of just saying, yes, we should do it. I want to make transit work. I have 30 years of experience in industry and 20 years as a Sunnyvale resident. I have deep knowledge of what the issues are in Sunnyvale, and I've been working on them for a long time. I've served over 7 years on 3 different committees in the city, as well as being a neighborhood chair for 3 years. And I volunteer at the homeless shelter, so I mean, I'm out there helping Sunnyvale all the time. And I think that I deserve your support and endorsement. I have the time to dedicate. I'm a retired person. I've been attending meetings like you cannot believe to be your city council person. I'm so dedicated. I also ran in 2016, and I'm running again because I really think that I can bring the changes we need to Sunnyvale City Council. John Fortis, C3. Thank you.
Thank you very much, candidate John Fortis. Moving on to candidate Josh Grossman as our final speaker.
So my name is Josh Grossman, and I'm running for seat 2. I'm a seasoned professional, an attorney, a tech executive, a former school board president, chair of our Housing and Human Services Commission in the past, now I'm the vice chair. But what really matters is I'm a grassroots candidate. Despite that fact, I've received the endorsement of the Santa Clara County Democratic Party, the South Bay Labor Council, and a plethora of individuals. But what's really important, what I want you to ask yourselves is, are you happy with the status quo? Do you feel like the city is better off now than it was 5 years ago? And if your answer to that question is yes, then I'm not the person that you want to vote for. If you think we can do better, then I urge you to come join us. I respectfully ask for your vote, and you can see more about my candidacy, my op-eds, and a number of things I've written at josh4council, the numeral 4.com. Thank you, and I really appreciate you coming out tonight.
Thank you very much, candidates. We appreciate your time and energy to come here tonight. This brings our formal program to a close. We now have about half an hour left where we hope you will be able to talk together and socialize. And on behalf of the entire coalition, we want to thank you for your attendance and your participation. And we hope it has been informative for you all. So help yourself to food as we